Andrei Mincov. Welcome to Inner Edison. Did I get close on that one?
Pretty good. Yeah.
I
Thanks
was
for
not
having
okay.
me.
Not
Excited to be here.
100%. It's like 85. Okay, sorry.
But
Yeah. All right, you say my last name.
Me
Parcaut.
say your name? Parcaut.
Parcaut.
Yeah.
It's easy when I say it. All right. Before we got started, we were on a non-hot mics. We were talking about, you have a picture behind you of Sty Stallone and a Cobra, which was a really good movie. He's had some really good movies, over time. And it's amazing how much the actors of the 80s are worth today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sty Stallone, especially those two.
Because the movies that they were in were worth rewatching and rewatching and rewatching, unlike the garbage that we get now, which is you watch it once and you're done.
Well, there isn't a lot of good ones now. I mean, just in general, they have to be very careful. They're so worried about what they say, what they do. Just like when you asked me before we started, can we cuss? I don't care. It's my show. We can do whatever we want. And that's how it should be. And that's how it was back then. I'm a vet, so I'm totally direct. This is how I am. You don't like who I am. That's okay. Go find somebody else you want to work with. That's okay with me. I'm not going to conform to you to get your business.
Yeah.
You want to push away people so you attract the people you want.
It's very true.
Right. And a lot of stuff we talk about on here is how your greatest accomplishments come from your greatest defeats. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you and when I said yes through Podmatch was because I think people need to know about trademarking, because I don't think people do it right or do it well. And I kind of want to know that background of that and why they should do it. But a little bit more background on you. People, we quickly talked about you. How long were you in Russia? Your whole life?
Well, that's where I was born. That's where I was, brought up. And where I went to my first law school, and I left Russia when I was 32, so 7. So you can backdate it if you want. And then I moved to Canada when I realized that, back then Russia had the same president it has now, which is freaking crazy.
Yeah. It's really not a presidency, but we'll move on.
Yeah, and in 07,
they call that dictatorship, I think, is what they really call that. So.
In 07, I realized that I wasn't enjoying the direction the country was going in, and I'm like, you know what? I can put my life on the altar of, fighting for change, or I can just move. And I chose the latter. And back in the day, I thought that every country outside the former Soviet Union would be smart enough to not try to recreate the socialist utopia. And when you live inside, it's a reasonable thought to have. So I thought, well, pretty much anything outside would be kind of a capitalist paradise, which meant so much sense to me back in the day. And I just put together a list of countries where English is a state language, because I could speak well enough to be able to work as a lawyer. And so I had, obviously US, Canada, UK, Australia, and I think that was pretty much the end of the list. And Canada was the easiest to get into legally and quickly. I'm a guy who doesn't list patience at the top of his virtues. Let's put it that way. So because I could get into Canada pretty quickly, that's where I decided to go. And, went to my second law school, and that was fun. Going back to law school.
I was going to ask you.
Huh?
I was going to ask you. You said you went to your first law school in
Russia.
Soviet, Russia, and then you had to go to another one because that's only good for Russia, right?
Well, yeah, because the funny thing in Russia, when I was in Russia, so my very first and favorite client was my dad. As I always tell that story, he was a famous composer there, and one day some radio station stole his music to turn his song into an ad for Samsung without his permission. That's how I got into the intellectual property field. But after I've taken that case all the way to second highest court in the nation and won, and I've done a bunch of court cases for him and, million license agreements and things like that, I also joined the largest international law firm in the world that had an office in Moscow, Baker McKenzie. And I was with them for something years. And that's where I did work for all the biggest clients you can think of. Like if you can name a 8, 9, 10 figure business, I've probably done some work for them there. And all of it was of course in English. So my assumption was, I go to Canada, they should welcome me with open arms and legs, because like it's the same thing. And first thing I hear is that no, you got to go back to law school. Like, okay, so I did my 3 more years of law school, and
you had to do another 3 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I go through that second law school. And
did you do better the second time?
Well, I finished up my class. And I thought that, okay, now is when they get to welcome me. Except they didn't. I got a grand total of, let me remember, 0 interviews with Canadian law firms. And that's when I discovered Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the whole new world of entrepreneurship for me. Because really, I never in my entire life had to look for clients, look at the business side of lawyering. I was just doing the pure legal stuff. And I was, I guess, too embarrassed to go back to Russia. So I said to myself, you know what? Might as well try to do something on my own. And I started my firm, which back in the day I named very creatively. Was called Mincov Law Corporation. And very quickly, probably it was my second week, I'm like, something missing from this business. Like, where are the clients? Excuse me. And so, had to go back and figure out the sales and marketing side of business. And once I learned that, I actually realized that I enjoy building the business more than I enjoy the legal side of it. And so the whole thing grew into what it is now, which is Trademark Factory. The only thing we do is we do trademarks, and we do it the way that nobody else does, which is guaranteed result for a guaranteed budget, one flat fee, and money back guarantee in case you don't get it. Right. I mean, we can talk about that more if you want, but that's kind of the short, condensed version of me getting into Canada and getting settled there.
So the Trademark Factory is it everywhere? United States?
Mostly the clients are from US and Canada. I would say US maybe 70%, Canada probably 28, and 2% would be everyone else.
How is it with trademarks throughout the whole rest of the world? Are they because there's international trademarks, right? And then there is like United States have them.
No, there's no such thing as an international trademark or a global trademark. You do trademarks on a per country basis. You can file an international trademark application through an international treaty. You can cover many countries. But in the end of the day, when you get registrations, there will be national to each country separately.
And what's the hardest country to do one in? China?
It really depends. China is hard because, so I'm just going to give you some statistics. In Canada, they file about 70,000 trademarks a year. In US, about 700,000. In China, 7 million.
Wow.
So these guys file the freaking alphabet. They file all sorts of random combinations, and somehow their trademarks office is okay with that. So
they file them ahead of time in case you want one.
Yeah.
And they can sell it to you or something.
Yeah. And this is actually one of the things that most people don't realize, is that even if you don't plan to sell your stuff in China, if you make it there and someone else has your trademark, you will not be allowed to export your own stuff that you paid for out of China to sell to US. Like we had a situation with one US company that did e-bikes. And so the guy, came up with a brand, came up with a design. He found a factory in China, paid him a crap ton of money to make them the bikes. They made the bikes, they put the brand on the bikes, they put the bikes in a big container, they put the big container in a big ship, right? And just when the ship was about to leave the port, the captain of the ship gets a letter, a demand letter, and some local police with it, basically saying, hey, we're arresting the ship because it has a container that has the bikes that are marked with a trademark that some guy in China owns. And the guy says, that's my trademark. You cannot export those bikes out of China because that will constitute trademark infringement. So they go back to the captain, talks to the owner of the factory. The owner of the factory sends a message to the owner of the U.S. company, says, well, you know what? Those bikes of yours, we can't ship them to you because they got arrested. And the guy, of course, goes absolutely nuts. And he's facing the situation when he either has to pay off the guy who stole his brand in China, or just lose all the money that he paid to the Chinese guys and remake them under some other brand. And neither of these options is a good one. And really the only good option he did have was to get a time machine and take it back to one day before the Chinese guy filed the trademark there. Right. And that's the stuff that most people don't realize, is that even if you have a brand trademarked in US, it has zero value outside of the US, like China, Russia, Brazil, Mexico, things like that.
So what you're saying, if you're going to have something built in China, have you file your trademark first.
Yeah.
Before you even start building something.
Before you talk to anybody there, before you talk to any factories, because, well, I guess it wasn't a coincidence that someone decided to file that trademark in China.
Right. Yeah, it was the manufacturer's brother.
Could be. But there's no way to prove that. And
right. But and you never, hey, I'm getting this order in, go get your trademark.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're laughing, but you know how these people work. People do that. I mean, and that's what we're getting at. So they still trademark, they still certain things, but they've learned how to do it. File trademarks, and then when you create something, you have to pay them off, right? And what's the going rate for something to pay them off, to buy it back? Did that guy ever do anything?
I'm not at liberty to share that information, but it can easily be 6-7 figures.
So pretty much whatever your production was.
So, like I said, it's something. But I mean, yeah, you can take them to court, and good luck with that, right? Suing someone in
China,
Chinese court with Chinese lawyers, with you understanding really nothing about what's going on beyond what they tell you is happening. And if American lawyers got bad reputation, well, try lawyers whose language you don't even speak.
Right.
Significantly harder.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's also the way they have had to learn how to survive in certain places. So they do what they, it's like after Hiroshima and Japan, and way after that, how they would barter between all of themselves to be able to make a living and other things. And so those nationalities have had to come up different ways of doing things that we don't even think about. And and so we can't, I don't want to say we can't judge them for the way they do it, because that's what they've always done. So,
yeah.
But so with the trademark, so if somebody created, so trademark is basically would that be the name and logo, or is that something different?
It could be a name, could be a logo. So I usually identify 5 most common things businesses trademark. First one will be the name of the business, or your name as an individual if you are the business, like Tony Robbins or something like
Right.
that. Right. The second would be
How easy is it to, if your name was Tony Robbins, right? And there's some
uh,
other Tony Robbins out there.
right. So
It's a common name, right?
it could be difficult to go with common names unless you can prove that you're actually known under that name. It's, by the way, this is a common misconception that even if you trademark that name, it doesn't mean that all the other Tony Robbinses must necessarily change their official names. They don't, but they cannot use their real official names to compete with the trademarked one to offer the same services, right? So they can't become the business coaches, the life coaches, or however else you can define what Tony does, right? So that's one, name of the business. The other one will be if you sell physical products, there'll be names of those physical products. So for example, name of the company, Apple, name of the products, iPad, iPhone, iMac, Retina display, all of those things. Third one will be names of the services. Could be iTunes, could be Mac Cafe. If you are in InfoBiz, it could be the names of your courses, names of your programs, stuff like that. The fourth one will be logos. And really, logos are of different importance to different businesses, right? If you're a big brick and mortar store that everyone needs to see that sign on the highway to take the right exit, you need that trademark. Like Golden Arches with McDonald's is huge value because of that. If you are a one-man accountant somewhere, in the middle of Texas, probably you don't need to trademark your logo because nobody cares, right? Whatever business you get is because people know you, not because they recognize your logo.
Right, but it might not be worth anything today, but in 10 years from now.
Could be. But again, and yeah, I was going to get to that, but
I'm just saying, don't be short-sighted on certain things,
yes.
especially, with the price point you just said to get trademarks done. That's not a very expensive. It's not like it used to be with some of these attorneys.
True. But again,
because you never know. I trademarked my podcast names because you don't know how it's going to be. One thing I ran into, I have one that's called Helping the Brave. I couldn't trademark the words, but I could trademark the logo.
Yeah.
And that was from the person.
Combined marks, like a design version of the name with some design elements, is a common workaround when the name is not available. You're right.
Well, it was just because it was a common thing, right? They were like, that's too that. And I trademarked, I had a book come out called Financial Freedom, but I trademarked Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership.
Yeah.
And it was probably the only book that ever had a trademark on it.
Well, with books, you need to trademark a series. You can't trademark the title of a single book.
My name was already trademarked. The title was already trademarked before it was a title. You follow me?
Yeah.
I don't know how legal that was, but basically I trademarked Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership is what I do. The book was called Financial Freedom, Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership.
That's cute.
So I just worked out,
Yeah.
So then that part of it was trademarked, the Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership, not Financial Freedom, but the other part.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want another book out there. Financial Freedom, Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership. Because, people, it's like t-shirts, right? You can't really trademark t-shirt statements, but you can do the logo in it.
Yeah. And, there are some limitations as to how far you can take enforcement of that trademark, but it's definitely better than having nothing. So you're absolutely right. Trademarks are about a few things. One, it's about protecting you from someone else trademarking it and forcing you out of your own brand.
Right.
Two, it gives you ammunition to go after others who want to copy what you do. And third, so the first two are kind of insurance. And the third one is you build an asset. You build an asset that you can monetize and that will grow in value as your business grows in value, right? And
Right.
so to finish that list off, the fifth
Sorry.
after the logo would be taglines. So if you got a marketing line that really
Right.
works well for you, might as well want to get a monopoly on that by getting that trademark. So
That way nobody else can use it.
yeah.
But
Well,
it's
think about it. Nike with Just Do It, right? They take a 30-cent white T-shirt, they print Just Do It on it, they put a swoosh on it, and they sell it for what, 40, 50 bucks? The whole Nike brand, just the brand itself, not their sneakers, not their shirts, not their factories, is $47 billion. The
wow.
whole company is 93. So the brand is worth more than half. It's pretty crazy if you think about it.
So when you trademark something, should it be owned by a person or a company?
If you have a company, you probably will put it in the name of the company, but you don't need to have a company in order to have a trademark. So you can start it as an individual. It's very easy to move your trademark from you as an individual to your company after.
Is it easier to move one from one company of yours to another company of yours? Trademarks?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The one thing that's
What I mean is,
really,
like, I have a lot of my stuff owned by my media company. What if
Mhm.
I don't want it? What if I decide to move it to, I don't want that media company anymore and I want to move it to something else?
Yeah,
Is
you
it,
can do that.
it's not a
Same
big
thing.
deal? Okay.
No, it's not a big deal. It's like 40 bucks to USPTO and you're done. The one thing that I strongly don't recommend is using partnerships, because partnerships are a really problematic type of an arrangement. It's really not an entity. It's a contract between a bunch of people. And that's the one that usually has a tendency to go bad. And when it does, you have no idea who's going to end up owning which assets.
Right.
So, again, this is not legal advice, of course,
Of
but
course not. It's educational.
yeah. But partnerships, filing a trademark through a partnership is usually a big gift to some lawyers trying to figure out how to bill you for untangling that mess. So
So corporation, LLC, okay.
yeah, because you put the time to figure out who owns the LLC, who owns
Right.
the corporation, what the structure there is, what the means are for dissolving it, for just disposing of the assets. So when that corporation files, that's easy because the trademark will follow the rest of the assets.
Gotcha. Once you file a trademark, how long is it good for?
Trademarks are the only type of IP that can last forever in theory.
Do
So
you have
as
to
long as you
redo
renew it
them?
every 10 years,
Okay.
and in US, there's another mandatory filing between the 5th and 6th anniversary of the registration. But as long as you're current on those and there are no annual fees, which is what you have in patents. With trademarks, every 10 years. Like, here's my favorite example. Coca-Cola filed their trademark in 1892. They're still renewing that same trademark. Incidentally, 1892 was the year when they were selling 9 drinks a day. Like, it's a lemonade stand with a dream, right? These guys knew that, hey, if we want to make it into a business, we got to own the most valuable asset of that business, which is the brand, which is now worth over, I think, either 70 or 80 billion dollars. And probably the best ROI they've gotten over anything else, whatever they paid their lawyers back in 1892.
Oh, yeah, it's been around a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the stuff we deal with haven't been around over 100 years. Right.
Yeah.
Anything you add there? Before I asked the question.
Well, not really. Well, to your point about stuff that that matters being around for a long time. I just got back from LA. I went there for rock and roll fantasy camp. Played the drums with some of the big stars that I used to look up to when I was growing up. And we went to a few clubs in Hollywood, Rainbow and Whiskey at Go-Go. We actually played there. And I see all of those, souvenirs and posters and drumhead signed and all of that. And I look at that and realize this is just a museum now, because you don't get anyone new of that same caliber that people want to follow and who have any interest in looking at their stuff. And so it's interesting how they've built those brands, and some of the bands are no longer there, but there's still a lot of business to be made around those brands. It's pretty fun, pretty interesting.
How long have you been playing?
Oof. More than I've been lawyering. I think I started when I was like 17, something like that. Never did it professionally. Never, I think I only started playing well enough maybe 10 years ago. Yeah.
Because you focused on stuff you didn't know.
Because to me, initially it was like, hey, you just get some drumsticks and play something. And then I'm like, well, you know what? Might as well learn how to do it right. And
yeah, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about professional players. They don't practice the stuff they know. They practice stuff they don't know to get better. Where most people who play practice stuff they know. And that's the difference between a professional and not a professional, is because they're always trying to grow what they're doing. And I was like, that's a different way. All right. So you said back Tony Robbins' name we were talking about. Is it a good idea to trademark your name? Because here's my question: is it when you go to sell it, you don't get your name anymore, right? What do you call yourself?
Well,
I mean, you're still Tony Robbins. You're just not Tony Robbins, the other thing, right?
Well, and that boils down to you having the vision to figure out how you're going to monetize on that brand and what's going to happen after, right? Is there a life to the brand without you in it? And is there something to you when you no longer have that brand, right? And whether it's about your personal name or about names of your products, or in your case, your podcasts and things like that, it's pretty much the same question you ask yourself. And the way I look at it is, nobody starts a business expecting that it will fail.
Right.
When we get this idea, like, hey, let me try and do something. Let me start something awesome, right? We have a dream and we think it might work out, right? There's no certainty, which is where all the fun is, but we all try to see the brighter side of it. And then at some point, another idea gets into your head. You realize, hey, it needs a name. This amazing idea that I came up with needs a name. And you come up with something, right? You don't just look at it as a code name. To you, it starts meaning something, right? And there's a reason you come up with that name. There's a reason you draw that stupid logo or whatever, right? It means something to you. And that moment, the value of the brand is zero, the actual value, because nobody knows about it. It's just in your head. And here, the interesting part about it is that at that very moment, the registrability of your brand is the highest it will ever be. Because the more people find out about your idea, the more people find out about your brand, the more people see your products, the more people come into contact with your services, the higher the value of your brand, but the lower the registrability, because the risk keeps going up with someone else trying to file something similar, even if they don't know your brand. Not necessarily that they're trying to actively steal it from you. And so to go back to this idea about nobody starts the business expecting that it will fail, I have a very simple 2-step question that anyone can ask themselves to decide if they should trademark their brand. The first question you ask yourself is, hey, if this thing is as successful as I hope it might be, will I still be selling these products and services under this brand 2-3 years from now? If the answer is no, even if the business is successful, I'll probably switch to something different. You don't need a trademark, because trademark takes a long time to get, right? It's about 1.5 years in the US, about 4 years in Canada, about 1 year in Europe, and so on. So if by the time you get that trademark registered, you don't need it, probably not a lot of sense going for it. So assuming your answer is, yeah, I'll still use that same brand. The second question you ask yourself, and that's very, excuse me, that's to your point about the logo. The second question you ask yourself is, if that business is super successful through the roof, right? You stroke gold, and you're still selling those products and services under that brand 2-3 years from now. Is the brand helping you get more people to find you, get more people to buy from you, get investors more interested in you, get people trust you more, or get better workers want to work for you? If it's not going to do any of those 5 things, you probably don't need to trademark that, because what you do need to do is go back to the drawing board and come up with a better brand. Because even if your business is super successful and your business does nothing for, and your brand does nothing for it, it's not a good brand, right? The purpose of a brand, first you work for the brand, then the brand works for you. And if you know that the brand is going to do nothing for you, then why'd you choose it? And assuming your answer is, yeah, the brand will be valuable, I'd say go and trademark it right now, because now is the easiest time to do it. It's going to be the cheapest. It's going to be the least problematic. And if you can't have it now, best you find out about it now than after you've invested tens of thousands of dollars on marketing the brand you can't own.
Right. And that's, I mean, I think for me, I think it's important to find out from the beginning before you put all that money behind something to see if it's worth being able to trademark, meaning that because it might be trademarked by somebody else, you just don't know it because you're not in that, you're not in Florida or someplace that they do a lot of, you know what I mean? You never know. So,
absolutely.
How's the trademark in Dubai?
We actually don't do trademarks here, because this place, I love living here. So I moved here a couple of years ago. The life is great. The weather is great. The taxes, well, they were great.
Coming.
Now
they're coming. I just heard they're coming.
Well, they added the corporate tax of 9%, which pisses me off. The personal is still 0. But compare that to Canada's 27 corporate and 53 personal. I'll take 9 plus 0 any day of the week. So, and Canada has the snow, and Canada has Trudeau. So, you know, but the way their trademarking stuff is set up, you need to provide legalized powers of attorney, and getting them from North America is a major pain in the ass. And so we actually had a few clients who started the process, found out about the legal requirements, and said, you know what, I don't want to do that. I don't want to bother. So we looked into that, and I can't blame them, because the stuff that they actually require and the way they require it just makes no sense, and makes the whole thing so complicated. So unless you actually have a business here, unless you actually have a lot of clients from Dubai, I wouldn't necessarily bother with it. But if you need help, and if you're prepared to go through the nightmare of getting all those documents, we can help too.
You said it's nice weather there. What's the weather there in Dubai?
I love it when it's hot. So it's usually like 90s, 100s, from usually from mid-February to like May, and then it gets really hot after that. Usually I leave, to go to other places for the summer, and then come back September and October. Yeah.
Sounds like we used to do in Mexico.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you don't have the same problems you have in Mexico there. So
Dubai is probably the safest place I've
that's what I
ever
mean. Yeah.
I've ever been to. Like, I go to the beach, I leave my towel on the beach, I leave my phone on the towel, I go swim, I come back in 15 minutes, the phone is still there. So I have my kids, I let them go out by themselves at night. My son, he just turned 10. He goes to see new friends every day. He plays with them. He comes back 10, 11 p.m. and there's zero worry that something might happen to him. It's worth something.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Andrei, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. Best way for people to find you?
Well, two ways. If you just want to learn more about trademarks, the easy path is YouTube, search for Trademark Factory, and you'll see close to 1,000 videos that I've published. Probably there's a question you have about trademarks, I've answered it more than once. And if you're an entrepreneur who's ready to go ahead and trademark your brand, I suggest you go to trademarkfactory.com, request a free call with one of our strategy advisors. They'll help you figure out what to start with, where to start with, how to do it, whether it's a name, the logo, a tagline, whatever. And they'll be able to help you get started with our guaranteed result for our guaranteed budget. Again, unlike everyone else in this industry who starts with a little fee and then milks you as the process unfolds, we tell you exactly how much the whole thing is going to cost from start to finish, no matter what happens in the middle. And if we can't overcome whatever objections the trademarks office throws at us, you get all your money back. When was the last time you got a refund from a lawyer?
Never.
Yeah,
it's a little different there. But again, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot about certain things about trademarks and different things. And I appreciate you giving that information to our audience.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation a lot.
Good. Don't run away. Stay right there. All right. Thanks for being here today. Everybody make it a great day. Thanks again.